Happy New Year, guys. It's New Year's evening. I found myself looking through some of this model data that's coming out, and I thought, I'm just going to go ahead and share it with you guys because I think you'll find this pretty interesting. New data on the GFS is pretty consistent, but the European has shifted just a little bit. We're going to talk about those details, and they're going to continue to shift over the next couple of days. And again, this is the storm that we're tracking that's going to move right across the country. And my question in this video, too, that I'm going to address is, what happens after this? Are we looking at some kind of winter storm from Texas along the Gulf Coast into the southeast? I'm not sold on this just yet. We're going to dig into all of these details today, and I do think it's going to turn cold. We're going to look at some of the ensemble outlooks for snow and the cold that's ahead too. You got to get the cold before you get the snow and the wintry precipitation, and I think we're headed that direction. It may not be as cold as what it was looking like a couple of days ago, but nonetheless, it's going to be chilly. Hey guys, thanks for checking this video out today. If you're brand new, you see me keep popping up in your algorithm on YouTube or your YouTube feed. I hope you'll subscribe and come back if you enjoy this type of weather forecasting and content. My background, if you're brand new, I used to be a chief meteorologist on television years ago. I got out of that business. I wanted to do something different with my life. And honestly, I wanted to spend more time with my family. I was working in the evenings. So I made the change, but I found myself looking at these types of things, these troughs, these ridges, these models. And here I am on New Year's Day looking at this stuff, tracking a snowstorm heading into next week. So I started making videos about it. So if you like this content, come back. All right, our trough's starting to become pronounced across the east. We've got our rain and snow moving into the west. I'm going to move pretty quickly through this. Snow across the northeast, also down to the Appalachians as we're seeing a disturbance move through. The lake effect will continue. And then we're going to start to see the first signs of our storm across the Pacific Northwest heading into the weekend. Heavy snow moving into parts of Idaho, Utah, into the Wasatch. I think we're going to get some heavy snow out of this. Also the mountains of Wyoming. Eventually it'll move into the mountains of Colorado. Now it's not going to move down into the Southwest, Southern California. We're going to stay dry here. And then as our trough starts to kick out into the plains, we're going to see surface low pressure develop here. On the north side of that, cold enough for snow. And this snow back up in here could also be fairly heavy too. Some of the data indicating that there could be several inches from South Dakota, Montana, into parts of Nebraska. But the heaviest band, I think, will be close to this low just on the north side of it where that mixed precipitation stops. Because as you get closer to the warm air, you're going to get a much shallower layer of cold air right at the surface. And that's going to lead to the freezing rain, the sleet, the snow as we head into Sunday and then into Monday. Now, this is the latest European from this afternoon. This looks very similar to what we were looking at today. It's bringing that rain, freezing rain line right here to Cincinnati with all snow up into Ohio, central Indiana, all snow for Indianapolis, and pretty much very close to all snow, maybe going over to some sleet or freezing rain just a little bit here at St. Louis, and all snow for Kansas City too. Very close anyway. And just to your south, though, just shows you how a shift of 50 miles and maybe even just 25 miles may mean a huge difference in the precipitation type. As our low moves across Tennessee, it's going to be dragging a cold front. Actually, the front by this point would be more like this. But anyway, I think there's a chance for severe weather here across the south. It's too early to talk about the hazards yet, but with a lot of dynamics, this is something you'll want to pay attention to, not just the snow and the cold element of this across the deep south. And then heading into Monday, this storm or system moves right toward Virginia. Some ice, some freezing rain possible here. I think you got to watch the Carolinas too, the Piedmont, and then your snow on the north side of that. It looks snowy to me from D.C. up to Baltimore. I don't know how far north it gets. Does it make it up to Philadelphia? The European says it's going to be just south of Philadelphia, the Delmarva. You're going to get some snow out of this if you're to believe this afternoon's run, which I'm starting to believe it. This is the new Canadian run, or I'm sorry, this is the new GFS run from today, and I do want to show you the Canadian. I think it's important to take a look at all the global models for something this far out, and is there agreement? Yeah, look at this. The GFS from this afternoon, or actually this is the 18Z, so this is almost brand new. And I don't like this one as much, by the way. It doesn't use as much data as the 12Z, which I'll go back and show you. But this is the newest 18Z, literally coming out as we're cutting this video, bringing that snow and rain. Look, it might arguably be a little bit colder here across Ohio with more snow for places like Cincinnati, over to Covington, and then over into Indiana, we're talking about almost all snow on the GFS with the exception of the extreme southern part of the state right along the Ohio River. Then you've got the freezing rain into Kentucky. Also back further to the west, it was very similar here looking across Missouri and Arkansas, mostly rain across Arkansas into the south, and then it moves toward the mid-Atlantic with some ice across Virginia, North Carolina. A warm nose of air tries to move up the Tennessee Valley into parts of southern West Virginia and southwest Virginia. It always does that with these types of setups, and then you see transitioning back to snow behind it as some cold air moves in. It looks like a decent snow here too on the GFS across the DC metro. Before we move on, I want to go back now to the 12Z today. And this is where it ended. Pretty similar looking here, but this is where things get different comparing the GFS to the European. The The European wants to hold back the upper low energy here. The GFS was ready for a fantasy storm. Now, if this was an outlier, I would say, I don't know, but you've got to start watching it when you see this much consistency. Now, we're talking about almost 7 days out now on next Thursday, the 9th. And this is something that I want to be watching. Do we continue to see this? Because this type of scenario would put snow into Arkansas, Texas. I mean, I am very doubtful that we see this. But I'm telling you, there's a chance. There wasn't a chance this week. There's not been a chance in a long time, at least like this. And I don't want to crush the dreams of those of you who are hoping for some snow in the south. You may be hoping it doesn't come because you know how devastating it can be. You don't have the infrastructure to handle getting rid of snow when it comes. But look at this. I mean, it puts snow all the way down, and the GFS usually is overdone. It puts the snow all the way down into middle Georgia. It's been a long time since you've seen snow in Macon, Birmingham, and back into central Mississippi. This moves east, and this puts a big snow now into East Georgia, Northeast Georgia, Atlanta, and then up to Columbia, Greenville, Spartanburg, Charlotte, Raleigh, out to the eastern parts of North Carolina. This is the GFS ensembles. I think this is a good way to reasonably consider whether we'll see snow or not in the south. You can see a 10 to 20% chance. That's what this purple is, and that's a 10 to 20% chance of seeing more than an inch of snow. So the odds are pretty low. Here are your chances of seeing greater than 6 inches of snow in the same time period, clearly up in this region, much higher. A long way to go before we get there. Let's talk more about what we feel confident about now, though. This is back to reality, I think, and closer to where I feel more confident. Snow across the west into the Cascades, even into the Colorado Rockies. We've talked about that heavy snow there, but your stripe of snow, clear to see where that's showing up. The ensemble guidance, which uses a variety of different parameters, and it gives you a good idea of where the heaviest snow. This is the potential of seeing more than 6 inches of snow. I want you to look right here at this orange, right across northern Missouri. That, my friends, is an 80 to 90% chance on the ensembles. Out of the 50 different members, you're seeing consensus there growing. So that's why those numbers are going up. And somebody's probably going to see more than that. Another thing to look at, too, is this sort of this tan color here. That is greater than 50% chance. That is expanding, too. And a lot of this up here in the lakes, that's the lake effect, right? You're definitely going to see some heavy snow out of this. Moving over to the operational run from this afternoon, taking a look at the snow totals. These are 10 to 1 ratios. We may actually be dealing with higher snow ratios if it's colder, so the snow would fluff up a little bit more. The closer you are to that sleet and freezing rain, you may end up with more like a 7 to 1 ratio or an 8 to 1 ratio. And that matters because what I'm talking about is for every 1 inch of rain, you get 10 inches of snow. If it's cold, that fluffs up. That 1 inch of rain may be more like 14 inches of snow, or less if it's more compacted, if it's an 8 to 1 ratio. So that gives you an idea of what we're looking at. We're just shooting down the middle with a 10 to 1 ratio here on this map. And you can see this puts snow into D.C. It puts it all the way into Kansas City, over to St. Louis, Indianapolis, not quite up to Columbus, although there will be some snow. And a lot of this up in here is actually already falling. This is the GFS, which is going crazy. This is not the 10 to 1 ratio. I want to flip it over to that. Boom. But still, look at this. This is impressive. You're still seeing close to a foot of snow across northern Missouri. It puts almost a foot of snow into St. Louis, east of that into northern Kentucky, southern Indiana, central Illinois, and then into parts of West Virginia. The GFS is not as bullish on the snow east of the mountains. I don't know if it's handling it just well. I feel like the European has a better grasp on what's going on with this system. Let's talk about where it starts. Again, it's going to be across the west. It'll move in with our rain and snow here heading into Friday, into Saturday. That snow could be heavy at times, and then it moves east of the mountains across parts of South Dakota. We could see close to a foot of snow in some spots. And a lot of you just seeing maybe 3 to 6, but an isolated 6 to 12, I don't think can be ruled out. Further to the south and east, that snow really picks up across southern Iowa as our system really gets cranked up here. There's going to be some sleet, some freezing rain on the southern side of this. So any sleet you see for places like Kansas City, over into northern Missouri, central Missouri, that's going to eat into your snow totals, your fluff, if you will, and now you've got to worry about the ice problems. Right up and down the Ohio River, this is something to watch, and then into southern Illinois, southern Indiana, sleet, snow, into Kentucky too here, and then just rain and your severe threat across the south as we head into Monday. A little bit further to the east, again, that snow on the European is a little more aggressive here, moving through D.C. as our system moves to the east. The GFS doesn't want to put it into northern Virginia. So this afternoon's European run is maybe arguably a little bit further to the north with the snow. This is today. This is where we were last night. So we've seen a bit of a jog to the north, I think, with our precip with a possible storm track being just a little bit further to the north. That might put a little bit of light snow into New York City. I'm not sold on it just yet. The heavy snow still, to me, looks to be south of this line. And then into Virginia, you've got to worry about the sleet, the freezing rain. Although Northern Virginia, to me, looks mostly snow at this point, especially once you get north of, say, I-64 up here into the panhandle of West Virginia, too, and into western Maryland, where there could be a decent amount of snow. All right, let's look at the snow totals a little bit closer. First, we'll look at the Northeast, too. We've got some snow here that's going to be wrapping up over the next 24 hours. Snow accumulations up here downwind of the lakes could really pile up over the next 24 hours through the weekend, and now we're looking toward the mid-Atlantic. For this storm, this is the European from this afternoon, a little bit closer. That snow line, at least that 2-inch line now, right up here near the PA-Maryland border, over 6 inches now here from central Delaware, back just north of D.C. over to Baltimore, and then over into northern West Virginia, very close to Morgantown. This is your 6-inch line, and then south of that into Virginia, you've got your 6-inch line on the southern side of it, looking like it's very close to Williamsburg, just south of Richmond, and then heading over to Lynchburg. At least I would say that's probably north of Lynchburg here. It's going to be pretty tough to get snow into Lynchburg, but you've got to also, I think most of the snow here will be into northern Virginia and northern West Virginia, and then back into Ohio from Huntington over to Cincinnati and Covington, back to the west to Indianapolis. I think we could easily look at 6 inches out of this, maybe more, depending on the track of this. But again, this is this afternoon's run. This was last night's run. So if anything, you could argue maybe the snow totals aren't as much, but we've seen a bit of a shift to the north. These models will go back and forth over the next couple of days. I don't see anything that I would change my forecast or outlook for this region just quite yet. Further to the west and south, this is looking at Illinois over into Missouri. So decent snow here across northern Missouri and into Kansas City. I think we're still in the game for possibly a foot or more of snow, and that continues back into parts of central and northeast Kansas, where we're seeing a good 6 to 12 inches in this area, and more locally higher amounts possible. Now let's talk about the south and what this looks like here. Again, there's going to be some sleet, some freezing rain on the east side of this and the north side of our storm as it moves through the Tennessee Valley. Some of that cold air gets trapped east of the mountains. I think that's still going to happen. The European may not be doing such a good job with it, but it may be a little colder here than what we're showing here. The ice looks like it's going to start to pick up here across the Blue Ridge, up to the New River Valley, the Greenbrier Valley into West Virginia, up into the Shenandoah Valley, and Roanoke over to Lynchburg, where it was showing snow. I mean, I'm not so sure that we get snow. I think it goes maybe starting to snow, then quickly over to sleet and freezing rain, as we just get a lot of warm air advection or warm air moving in over top of that shallow layer of cold air. And the same could be said back here into parts of Kentucky. Now, we're cold enough, I think, for all snow up here into Ohio, central Illinois, central Indiana. But if this thing shifts just a little bit to the north, move everything north just a little bit. All right, that's all I got. See you next time.